Have you ever wondered what you would do differently if life gave you a second chance? What if you could go back and recognize the one person who truly loved you before it was too late? This is a story about betrayal, hidden devotion, and the courage to rewrite your destiny. The winter wind cut through Seoul like a blade, swirling snow around the glass towers of Gangnam District. Inside the Kim family penthouse overlooking the Han River, 21-year-old Soyeon stood before her father's mahogany desk, holding an envelope that would change everything. Her stepmother Mirai smiled from the leather sofa, while her stepsister Jiwoo pretended to study contract documents, though Soyeon could see the satisfied gleam in her eyes. "Your flight to London leaves in 2 hours," her father Changmin said without looking up from his computer. "The art school has already processed your enrollment. Everything is arranged." Soyeon's fingers trembled as she opened the envelope, finding the plane ticket and acceptance letter to a prestigious dance academy she had never applied to. "But father, the board meeting is tomorrow. You promised I could present my proposal for the company's expansion into cultural investments." Mirai stood gracefully, her designer handbag perfectly pressed despite the late hour. "Darling, your father and I have discussed this thoroughly. Jiwoo has been preparing for months to handle the presentation. You've always wanted to study contemporary dance in Europe. This is your dream coming true." "I never said that," Soyeon protested, her voice rising. "I want to help grow father's company. The Kim Corporation has been in our family for 3 generations. Mother would have wanted me to carry on her legacy." Her father finally looked up, his expression cold. "Your mother died bringing you into this world. Don't presume to know what she would have wanted. Jiwoo has proven herself capable of managing corporate affairs. Your talents lie elsewhere." The words struck like physical blows. Soyeon had spent 5 years since her mother's death trying to earn her father's approval, studying business at Seoul National University, learning every aspect of Kim Corporation's operations. Now she understood that none of it mattered. They had already decided her future without consulting her. "The car is waiting downstairs," Jiwoo said sweetly, touching Soyeon's arm with false concern. "Don't worry about the company. I'll take care of everything. This is actually better for you. In London, you'll be free to live your own life without all these corporate responsibilities weighing you down." Soyeon pulled away, her mind racing. Something felt wrong about this sudden urgency, the way Mirai and Jiwoo exchanged knowing glances. But what choice did she have? Her father had clearly made his decision. She was being exiled from her own family, her own company, under the pretense of pursuing opportunities abroad. "I need to pack properly," Soyeon said. 2 hours isn't enough time." "Your bags are already in the car," Mirai replied smoothly. "I took the liberty of packing your essentials. You can shop for anything else once you arrive. The academy has arranged temporary housing near their campus in Kensington." Defeated, Soyeon walked toward the elevator. As the doors began to close, she heard Jiwoo's voice drift across the marble foyer. "Sister, enjoy your freedom. Don't worry about father's boring company. Some of us were meant for business, and some were meant for art." The contempt beneath the sweet words finally broke through Soyeon's composure. She had been so blind, so desperate for family approval that she had missed all the signs. Mirai had married her father less than a year after her mother's death. Jiwoo, only 6 months older than Soyeon, had appeared overnight as Mirai's daughter from a previous relationship. Together, they had systematically pushed Soyeon to the margins of her own life while positioning Jiwoo as the heir apparent. The elevator descended through the 40-story building, each floor a countdown to exile. When the doors opened to the underground parking garage, Soyeon expected to see the family's regular driver. Instead, a man she didn't recognize stood beside a black sedan with tinted windows. He smiled too widely, showing too many teeth. "Miss Kim? I'm here to take you to Incheon Airport." Every instinct screamed danger. Soyeon took a step backward. "Where is Mr. Park? He always drives me." "Mr. Park called in sick. Your stepmother arranged for me to replace him tonight." The man moved closer, his hand reaching for her elbow. "We should leave now to avoid traffic." Soyeon jerked away and ran. She heard the man curse behind her, heard his footsteps echoing off the concrete pillars as he gave chase. Her heels clicked against the polished floor as she sprinted toward the garage exit, her breath coming in panicked gasps. She could see the street beyond the security gate, could see people walking past in the snow. If she could just reach them, she would be safe. A hand grabbed her shoulder from behind. Soyeon screamed and twisted away, losing her balance. She fell hard against the concrete barrier, her head striking the edge with a sickening crack. The world tilted sideways, colors bleeding together as pain exploded through her skull. Through the haze, she heard the man speaking urgently into his phone. "She fell. I didn't touch her. What do you want me to do?" Then everything went black. Soyeon woke to the steady beep of medical monitors and the antiseptic smell of hospital air. Her head throbbed with each heartbeat, and when she tried to move, sharp pain radiated through her entire body. She forced her eyes open, squinting against the fluorescent lights. A private room, expensive equipment, the kind of care that required serious money. She tried to remember how she had gotten here, but the memories felt slippery, fragmented. "You're awake." The voice came from beside her bed, deep and familiar. Soyeon turned her head carefully and found herself staring at Taehyun Kang, her father's business partner and closest friend. He sat in the visitor's chair with his suit jacket draped across the armrest, his tie loosened, his usually perfect hair slightly disheveled as though he had been here for hours. "Don't try to move too quickly. You have a severe concussion and 2 cracked ribs." "What happened?" Soyeon's voice came out as a raspy whisper. Her throat felt raw, as though she had been screaming. "You don't remember?" Taehyun leaned forward, his dark eyes searching her face with an intensity that made her heart skip. "The police said you were found in the parking garage of your building. You had fallen and hit your head. When I got to the emergency room, you were unconscious. The doctors weren't sure you would wake up." The memories began filtering back, hazy and incomplete. The envelope with the plane ticket, the strange driver, running, falling. Someone was chasing me, a man I didn't recognize. Taehyun's expression hardened. "Your stepmother said she hired a new driver for the night because the regular one was ill. When the police tried to locate him for questioning, they discovered he didn't exist. The name and credentials Mirai provided were completely fabricated." Soyeon's mind struggled to process this information. Why would she do that? Where is my father? "Your father is in Japan for the board meeting. He flew out this morning." Taehyun stood and walked to the window, his hands clenched behind his back. "Soyeon, how much do you know about your mother's death?" The question caught her completely off guard. She died in childbirth. There were complications. The doctors couldn't save her. That's what everyone was told. Taehyun turned back to face her, his expression grave. "But I never believed it. Your mother was healthy throughout her pregnancy. All her checkups were normal. Then suddenly, during delivery, everything went wrong. The attending physician claimed it was an undetected condition, but your mother's regular obstetrician was conveniently transferred to another hospital the week before her due date." Soyeon felt as though the floor had dropped away beneath her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I've suspected for years that your mother's death was not accidental. And after what happened to you tonight, I'm certain of it." Taehyun returned to the bedside, pulling his chair closer. "Mirai worked as an executive assistant at Kim Corporation when your mother was pregnant. She had access to everything, all the family's private information, medical records, financial accounts. 3 months after your mother died, she was promoted to director of operations. 6 months later, she was married to your father, and her daughter was living in your home. The pieces began falling into place with horrible clarity. You think she killed my mother? I think she arranged for your mother to die so she could take her place, and I think tonight she tried to do the same to you. Taehyun's voice remained steady, but Soyeon could see the fury burning beneath his controlled exterior. With you gone, Jiwoo would inherit everything. The Kim family fortune, the company, all of it. Your mother's legacy would belong to the woman who murdered her. Soyeon closed her eyes, trying to absorb the enormity of what he was telling her. Her entire life had been built on lies. The stepmother who pretended to care for her had killed her real mother. The father who pushed her aside had been manipulated and deceived. The stepsister who smiled so sweetly had been positioning herself to steal everything that rightfully belonged to Soyeon. Why are you telling me this? She asked quietly. Why do you care what happens to me? When she opened her eyes again, Taehyun was staring at her with an expression she had never seen before. It was raw and unguarded, full of an emotion she couldn't quite name. Because I've been in love with you since the day you turned 18, he said simply. Because watching you suffer while being unable to protect you has been the worst torture of my life. Because if I lose you, I lose the only thing that matters. The world seemed to stop. Soyeon had known Taehyun for as long as she could remember. He was her father's age, 42 to her 21. But he had never seemed old to her. He was brilliant and driven, with a reputation for ruthless efficiency in business negotiations. He had built Kang Enterprises from nothing into one of Seoul's most successful investment firms. She had attended countless dinners and corporate events where he was present, had heard him debate policy and strategy with her father, had occasionally caught him watching her with an expression she had always assumed was polite interest. She had never imagined this. You don't mean that, she whispered. You're just trying to make me feel better. I mean every word. Taehyun reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently took her hand. His fingers were warm and steady, anchoring her to reality. Do you know why I came to the hospital tonight? Because your stepmother called me at 11 o'clock to say you had been in a terrible accident and probably wouldn't survive. She wanted to inform me before calling your father in Tokyo. She wanted to prepare me for the news that you were dying. But I'm not dying. No. And when I got here and found you alive, Mirai's expression told me everything I needed to know. She was disappointed. She had expected the driver to finish what he started, to make sure you never woke up. When the police began asking questions, she panicked and disappeared him. Taehyun's grip tightened slightly. I can't prove any of this yet, but I will. I'm going to expose everything she's done, and I'm going to make sure you get justice for your mother. Soyeon felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She hadn't cried since her mother's funeral, had taught herself to swallow grief and anger and fear until she felt nothing at all. But now, lying in a hospital bed with her body broken and her life shattered, something inside her cracked open. I'm so tired of fighting, she admitted. I'm tired of trying to earn my father's love. I'm tired of pretending Mirai and Jiwoo care about me. I just want to disappear. Then disappear. Taehyun stood abruptly and pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. Let them think they won. Let them believe you died tonight. We'll arrange everything. New identity, new life. You can go anywhere you want, be anyone you want. And when you're ready, when you're strong enough, we'll come back and destroy them. The idea was insane. It was impossible. It was exactly what she needed. Where would I go? Soyeon asked. Anywhere. Paris, New York, Singapore, or you could stay in Seoul, hidden in plain sight while we gather evidence against them. Taehyun sat back down, his expression intense. I have resources, connections, safe houses across the city. Mirai won't be able to find you. And while you recover, I'll work on building a case that will send her to prison for the rest of her life. What about my father? Won't he want to know what happened to me? The flash of anger across Taehyun's face was unmistakable. Your father will believe whatever Mirai tells him to believe. He's been under her control since the day she entered his life. Don't waste your sympathy on him, Soyeon. He chose his new family over you a long time ago. The truth of those words hurt worse than her physical injuries. But Soyeon knew he was right. She had spent years chasing her father's approval, and he had spent those same years replacing her with Ji-woo. She was done begging for scraps of affection from people who wanted her dead. "All right," she said. "I'll disappear. But on one condition. Name it. You teach me how to fight back. Not just against Mireille, but against anyone who tries to control me. I'm done being the victim in my own life. When I come back, I want to be someone they can't touch." Taehyun smiled for the first time since entering the room, and it transformed his entire face. "Deal. Welcome to your new life, Soyeon Kim. Or should I say, whoever you decide to become." 3 days later, Soyeon Kim was officially declared dead. The hospital issued a death certificate stating that she had succumbed to traumatic brain injury sustained in her fall. Her father flew back from Tokyo for a small private funeral, where Mireille cried convincing tears, and Ji-woo delivered a touching eulogy about her beloved sister. The coffin they lowered into the ground at the cemetery in Seongbuk-dong contained sandbags wrapped in white silk. The real Soyeon watched the funeral from a car parked half a block away, her hair cut short and dyed black, wearing oversized sunglasses and clothes she would never have chosen in her old life. Taehyun sat beside her in the driver's seat, his hand resting on her knee in silent support, as she watched her father shovel dirt onto her empty grave. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. "I'm free," she replied. And for the first time in years, she meant it. Taehyun had arranged everything with the efficiency she had come to expect from him. He owned a penthouse apartment in the quieter neighborhood of Samcheong-dong, tucked away from the flashy glamour of Gangnam, with traditional hanok houses lining the streets below, and the green slopes of Bukhansan Mountain visible in the distance. The building had excellent security, underground parking, and enough anonymity that nobody would question a new resident moving in. He had registered the apartment under a false name, paid cash for everything, and made sure there was no paper trail connecting Soyeon to her new home. The apartment itself was beautiful in a minimalist way, all clean lines and natural materials, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Gyeongbokgung Palace and modern artwork that probably cost more than most people's annual salary. Taehyun had stocked the kitchen with groceries, filled the closets with clothes in her size, and left a credit card and phone on the kitchen counter with instructions written in his precise handwriting. "This is your safe place," he had told her while showing her around on that first day. "Nobody knows about it except me. You can stay here as long as you need to recover and plan your next move. I'll check on you every day, but you're in complete control. No more people making decisions for you." That had been 6 months ago. 6 months of healing, both physically and emotionally. 6 months of Taehyun visiting every evening after work, bringing dinner from different restaurants around Seoul, sitting with her while she ate and talking about everything and nothing. 6 months of slowly realizing that his confession in the hospital had been completely sincere, that he looked at her with a devotion she had never experienced before, that he was willing to wait as long as it took for her to feel the same way. 6 months of falling in love with him without admitting it, even to herself. Soyeon stood at the window now, watching the last light fade from the palace rooftops as evening settled over the city. Her hair had grown back to shoulder length, still dyed black, but styled in a way that made her look sophisticated, rather than like she was hiding. The bruises and cuts had faded. Her ribs had healed. She had spent the past 3 months training with a private instructor Taehyun had hired, learning self-defense and rebuilding her strength until she felt powerful in her own body for the first time in her life. She was ready to stop hiding. The sound of the apartment door opening made her turn. Taehyun entered carrying bags from their favorite Chinese restaurant in Myeongdong, along with his briefcase and what looked like a thick file folder. He smiled when he saw her, that warm, genuine expression he reserved only for private moments between them. "I brought jjajangmyeon and tangsuyuk," he said, setting the bags on the kitchen counter. And I have news. Soyeon joined him in the kitchen, helping unpack the food containers while trying to ignore how domestic this had become, how much she looked forward to these evenings together. What kind of news? The kind that's going to make you very happy. Taehyun opened the file folder and spread documents across the counter. I finally found the doctor who attended your mother's delivery. He's been living in Busan for the past 15 years, practicing under a different name. It took considerable effort to track him down, but I eventually convinced him to talk. Soyeon's hands stilled on the container of fried rice. What did he say? He admitted that Mirai paid him 500 million won to ensure complications during the delivery. He was supposed to prioritize saving you over your mother, making it look like a tragic but unavoidable choice. He's been carrying the guilt ever since, especially after he discovered that your mother had specified in her birth plan that if it came to a choice, the doctor should save the baby. She wanted you to live, even at the cost of her own life. The pain hit Soyeon like a physical blow. Her mother had sacrificed herself willingly, and Mirai had exploited that sacrifice to commit murder. Will he testify? He's already agreed to provide a sworn statement. We also have bank records showing the payment from an account Mirai controlled, though she tried to hide the transaction through several shell companies. Taehyun reached for Soyeon's hand, lacing their fingers together. We have enough evidence now to press charges. But I wanted to ask you first how you want to handle this. Do you want to go to the police immediately, or do you want to confront Mirai yourself? Soyeon thought about her stepmother's false tears at the funeral, about Jiwoo's satisfied smile as she accepted condolences, about her father's blank expression as he watched his daughter's empty coffin lowered into the ground. She thought about her mother dying in agony while giving birth, believing she was saving her child, never knowing she had been betrayed by the woman she had trusted. I want to confront them, she said quietly. All of them. I want them to see that I survived, that their plan failed, and then I want to watch them pay for what they've done. Taehyun smiled, and there was something fierce and protective in his expression that made her heart race. Then we'll do it your way. I'll arrange everything. There's something else. Soyeon turned to face him fully, still holding his hand. I need to tell you something I should have said months ago. You don't have to tell me anything you're not ready to share. I'm ready. She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. When you said you loved me in the hospital, I thought you were just being kind. I thought you felt sorry for me. But these past 6 months, watching you show up every single day, bringing me food and making me laugh and helping me become strong again, I finally understood. You've been taking care of me since I was a child. You've been protecting me from things I didn't even know to fear. And somewhere along the way, you became the most important person in my life. Taehyun's expression softened, but he waited silently for her to continue. I'm in love with you, Soyeon said. I think I have been for a long time, but I was too scared to admit it, too worried about the age difference, or what people would think, or whether I was just confusing gratitude with something deeper. But I'm not confused anymore. I love you, Taehyun. And when this is over, when we've made them pay for everything they've done, I want to be with you. Really be with you, not hiding in this apartment, but out in the world where everyone can see. For a moment, Taehyun just stared at her. Then he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe, his face buried in her hair. Do you have any idea how long I've waited to hear you say that? He murmured against her ear. Do you know how many times I've wanted to tell you how I feel, but stopped myself because I didn't want to pressure you? Tell me now, Soyeon whispered. He pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands, his dark eyes intense and unwavering. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. I have loved you since you were a child, though back then it was different, the way you would love a niece or a family friend. But when you turned 18 and gave that speech at your mother's memorial, standing in front of hundreds of people and talking about carrying on her legacy, I realized you had grown into someone extraordinary, someone brave and intelligent and kind despite everything you'd suffered. And I knew that if you ever looked at me the way you're looking at me now, I would spend the rest of my life making sure you never regretted it. Soyeon rose up on her toes and kissed him. It was tentative at first, uncertain, the first real kiss of her life, and she wanted to do it right. But then Taehyun made a soft sound in the back of his throat and deepened the kiss, his hands sliding into her hair as he pulled her closer. Heat flooded through her body, desire and need, and something that felt like coming home after a long journey. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Taehyun rested his forehead against hers. "We should eat dinner before it gets cold." "Dinner can wait." Soyeon kissed him again, pouring 6 months of longing and fear and hope into the contact. "I've waited long enough for everything else in my life. I'm done waiting for this." They never made it to dinner that night. Instead, they lay tangled together on Taehyun's bed, learning the shape of each other's bodies, mapping scars and sensitive places with gentle hands. Taehyun was patient and careful, making sure Soyeon felt safe every moment, checking in with her constantly until she laughed and told him to stop treating her like she would break. "I'm stronger now," she reminded him, running her fingers through his hair. "You made sure of that." "You were always strong," he corrected, kissing the hollow of her throat. "I just helped you remember." Afterward, they lay in comfortable silence while the city lights sparkled outside the windows. Soyeon traced patterns on Taehyun's chest, content in a way she had never experienced before. Everything that had happened, all the pain and betrayal and fear, had led her here to this moment, and she wouldn't change any of it if it meant losing this. "When do we move against them?" she asked eventually. "Whenever you're ready. We can go tomorrow if you want." Soyeon thought about it, about the confrontation she had been imagining for months. "Let's wait for the anniversary. My mother died 21 years ago next week. It seems fitting to expose Mirai's crime on that date, don't you think? A final act of justice for my mother." "Perfect." Taehyun kissed the top of her head. "We'll make sure your mother gets the justice she deserves, and then we'll start building our life together, properly this time. No more hiding, no more pretending. I want everyone to know you're mine." "I want that too." Soyeon shifted to look up at him. "But first, I need to learn one more thing from you." "What's that?" "How to run a company. Because when we take Kim Corporation away from Mirai and Jiwoo, I'm going to need to know how to turn it into something my mother would have been proud of." Taehyun's smile was brilliant. "Now that, I can definitely teach you." The anniversary of her mother's death fell on a cold Tuesday in December. Seoul was covered in the first real snow of the season, white flakes drifting down to coat the streets and buildings in pristine beauty. Soyeon stood in front of the bathroom mirror in Taehyun's apartment, now officially their apartment, since she had moved her few belongings from the spare bedroom into his, and studied her reflection. She wore a black designer suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, her hair styled in elegant waves that framed her face, subtle makeup that enhanced her features without hiding them. She looked like someone who belonged in the boardroom, someone who could command respect, someone her mother would recognize. "Are you ready?" Taehyun appeared in the doorway, also dressed in a dark suit, holding her coat. "The car is waiting downstairs." "I'm ready." Soyeon took one last look at herself, memorizing this moment. Today she stopped being a victim. Today she became someone who fought back. "Let's go." They had arranged the confrontation carefully. Taehyun had called her father 2 days ago, requesting an emergency board meeting at Kim Corporation headquarters to discuss irregularities in the company's financial records. He had implied that someone had been embezzling money, enough to make Changmin take the accusation seriously. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 in the morning, giving them time to gather all the evidence in one place. The Kim Corporation building rose 40 stories above the streets of Gangnam, all glass and steel, a monument to her grandfather's vision and her mother's business acumen. Soyeon had spent countless hours here as a child, wandering the halls while her mother worked, pretending she was already an executive with important decisions to make. She had loved this building once. Then it had been stolen from her, like everything else. Today, she was taking it back. They rode the elevator to the executive floor in silence, Taehyun's hand warm and steady in hers. When the doors opened, she saw her father's secretary first, a woman named Mrs. Choi, who had worked at Kim Corporation since before Soyeon was born. Mrs. Choi looked up from her desk, her expression polite and professional, then froze when she recognized the woman standing before her. "Miss Kim?" Mrs. Choi's voice came out as barely a whisper. "But you're dead. We buried you. How can you be here?" "I'm very much alive, Mrs. Choi." Soyeon kept her voice gentle but firm. "Is my father in the conference room?" "Yes, but Miss Kim, I don't understand. What's happening?" "You will soon. Thank you for always being kind to me." The conference room doors were solid oak, imposing and heavy. Taehyun pushed them open without knocking, and Soyeon walked through like she owned the place. Because technically, she did. The table inside was occupied by 6 people. Her father at the head, Mirai on his right side, Jiwoo beside her mother, and 3 board members who had been close friends with Soyeon's mother. Everyone looked up when they entered, their faces ranging from confusion to shock to outright horror. It was Mirai who broke first. She stood so suddenly that her chair toppled backward, her face draining of color, until she looked like she might faint. "No, this isn't possible. You're dead. I saw your body. I went to your funeral." "You attended the funeral of someone else entirely." Soyeon walked to the opposite end of the table from her father, Taehyun standing behind her like a guardian. "The Soyeon you buried was a fiction. The real Soyeon has been alive and well and gathering evidence of your crimes." Her father finally found his voice, though he still looked like he had seen a ghost. "Soyeon? Is it really you?" "Yes, father, it's me. Surprised? You shouldn't be. You've always underestimated me, dismissed me as weak and useless. But I'm my mother's daughter. Did you really think I would let these women destroy everything she built without fighting back?" "I don't understand." Chungmin's voice shook. "The hospital said you died of your injuries. They issued a death certificate. How is this possible?" "The hospital issued the certificate I paid them to issue," Taehyun said calmly. "It's remarkable how cooperative medical professionals become when you offer them enough money and the promise of protection from prosecution. Soyeon's injuries were real, but they were never life-threatening. We simply decided it would be safer for everyone to believe she was dead while we investigated the attempt on her life." Jiwoo had been silent until now, but she finally spoke up, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. "This is insane. Mother, tell them this is insane. Soyeon is clearly suffering from some kind of delusion. Maybe the head injury affected her mental state." "Stop calling her mother," Soyeon said sharply. "She's not your mother. Or rather she is, but she's not mine. My mother was murdered by the woman sitting beside you, and I can prove it." "Murdered?" One of the board members, Director Park, leaned forward with concern. "Kim Soyeon, these are very serious accusations. I have very serious evidence." Taehyun opened his briefcase and began spreading documents across the conference table. Bank records showing a payment of 500 million won from an account controlled by Mirai Kim to Dr. Yoon Seok-jin, the physician who attended Soyeon's mother during her delivery. Dr. Yoon has provided a sworn statement admitting that he was paid to ensure complications during the birth, resulting in the death of Lee Yunmi. He's currently being held in protective custody, waiting to testify before a grand jury. The board members passed the documents between them, their expressions growing more shocked with each page they reviewed. Director Park looked at Mirai with something like disgust. Is this true? Did you pay a doctor to murder Yunmi? This is ridiculous. Mirai's voice was shrill, defensive. Those documents are obviously forgeries. Taehyun has wanted to destroy me for years because I rejected his advances after Yunmi died. This is all revenge for a wounded ego. Is that why you also tried to have Soyeon killed 6 months ago? Taehyun's voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath the surface. We have testimony from the fake driver you hired, the one you tried to make disappear after he failed to kill Soyeon in the parking garage. He's been very cooperative, especially after we offered him immunity in exchange for his full cooperation. He's prepared to testify that you paid him 200 million won to arrange what would look like a fatal accident. You can't prove any of this, Jiwoo said desperately. It's all circumstantial. Our lawyers will tear apart these accusations. Will they also tear apart the medical examiner's report from Soyeon's mother's autopsy? Taehyun produced another document. When we started investigating, we discovered that the original autopsy report disappeared from hospital records shortly after Yunmi's death. But we found a copy in the personal files of the examiner who conducted it. He noted several irregularities that suggested the complications were artificially induced, but his concerns were dismissed by hospital administration. Administration that received a significant donation from Mirai Kim just weeks after Yunmi's funeral. Changmin had been reading through the documents with shaking hands, his face growing paler with each revelation. Mirai, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't kill my wife. Don't listen to them. Mirai tried to touch his arm, but he jerked away. They're trying to turn you against me. Everything I've done has been for this family, for the company. Yunmi was weak. She would have let Kim Corporation stagnate while she focused on charity work and cultural projects. I made this company strong. I made you strong. You need me. You murdered my wife. Changmin's voice broke. You killed the mother of my child and then moved into her place in my bed. How could you do that? How could I have been so blind? Because you wanted to be blind, Soyeon said, and despite her anger, she felt a twinge of pity for her father. He had been manipulated, yes, but he had also chosen comfort over truth, had chosen Mirai's efficiency over his own daughter's well-being. You were so lost after Mother died that you let this woman into your life without questioning anything about her. You let her push me aside, let her position Jiwoo as your heir, all while forgetting that I was Mother's legacy, the only legacy that should have mattered. One of the other board members, Director Song, cleared his throat. If what you're saying is true, and we have every reason to believe it is based on this evidence, then there are serious legal and corporate implications to address. Mirai Kim has been operating as an officer of this company under fraudulent pretenses. Any contracts or agreements she's signed could be called into question. The reputation damage alone could destroy Kim Corporation. That's where I come in, Soyeon said. I propose we handle this quietly, at least initially. Mirai and Jiwoo will resign from all positions at Kim Corporation immediately. They will also transfer any shares they hold back to the family trust. In exchange, we won't press criminal charges right away, giving them time to leave the country if they choose. But make no mistake, if they ever attempt to return to Seoul or contact anyone in this family again, I will pursue prosecution to the fullest extent of the law. You can't do that, Jiwoo protested. This company is half mine. Your father gave me those shares. Those shares were always meant for Mother's children, Soyeon corrected. Father, I'm giving you a choice. You can continue to support the woman who murdered your wife, or you can do the right thing for the first time in 21 years and give me what's rightfully mine. What will it be? Changmin looked between his daughter and his wife, his expression tortured. For a long moment, Soyeon thought he might actually choose Mirai, might actually let his guilt and weakness win. But then he straightened his shoulders and turned to Mirai with cold finality. Get out, he said. Both of you. Pack your things and leave my home. I'll have the lawyers draw up the paperwork for the share transfers. You have 48 hours to comply, or I'll join Soyeon in pressing criminal charges. You'll regret this, Mireille hissed, her polished facade finally cracking completely. I made you relevant. Without me, you're nothing but a weak man who let his wife die and then ignored his daughter out of guilt. You don't deserve the success I built for you. You're right, Changmin said quietly. I don't deserve any of this, but my daughter does. She deserves the inheritance her mother intended for her. The company that should have always been hers, the life you stole from her. Get out of my sight, both of you. Mireille and Jiwoo left in a fury of threats and recriminations, their departure witnessed by security guards Taehyun had stationed outside the conference room. When they were gone, the remaining board members turned to Soyeon with expressions of respect and curiosity. What now, Miss Kim? Director Park asked. You've exposed the truth and reclaimed your birthright. What are your plans for Kim Corporation? Soyeon looked at her father. This man who had failed her so completely yet had finally chosen correctly when it mattered most. That depends on father. I want to run this company the way mother would have wanted, focusing on sustainable growth and cultural investments that benefit Seoul and the Korean people. But I can't do that if you're going to fight me at every turn. So, I need to know. Are you going to let me lead, or are we going to keep fighting for control? Changmin stood and walked slowly around the table until he stood before his daughter. Up close, Soyeon could see how much he had aged in the past 6 months. The new lines around his eyes, the gray in his hair that hadn't been there before. Your mother would be so proud of you, he said, his voice rough with unshed tears. She would be proud of how strong you've become, how you fought back against the people who tried to destroy you. I failed you, Soyeon. I failed you every day since your mother died. But if you'll allow me, I'd like to spend the rest of my life making up for that. I'll step down as CEO. The company is yours now. All I ask is that you let me stay involved. Let me help you build something worthy of your mother's memory. It wasn't enough. Years of neglect couldn't be erased by one apology. But it was a start. And Soyeon found that she had enough forgiveness in her heart to accept it. All right, she said. You can stay. But you work for me now. If I say jump, you ask how high. Understood. Understood. The board members applauded, a sound that echoed strangely in the large conference room. Director Park stood and extended his hand to Soyeon. Welcome back, CEO Kim. Your mother would be very proud indeed. Soyeon shook his hand, then turned to Taehyun, who had been watching everything with quiet satisfaction. Thank you, she said simply. For everything. I told you, he replied, pulling her into his arms despite the presence of the board members and her father. I would do anything for you. Anything at all. Director Song cleared his throat delicately. I take it there's been a development in your relationship beyond business partnership? Yes, Soyeon said firmly, not bothering to hide her smile. Taehyun and I are together. I know there will be gossip about the age difference and the timing, but I don't care. He saved my life and helped me take back what was stolen from me. I love him, and I'm not going to hide that from anyone. Her father looked between them, his expression complicated. Taehyun, you're my oldest friend. But if you hurt my daughter, I will end you. I would expect nothing less, Taehyun replied with a slight smile. But you don't need to worry. I've waited 20 years for her to look at me the way she's looking at me now. I'm not going to waste this chance. Good. Changmin turned back to the board members. Gentlemen, I believe we have a company to rebuild. Shall we get started? The next 6 months passed in a blur of activity. Soyeon threw herself into learning every aspect of Kim Corporation's operations, from the manufacturing facilities in Incheon to the real estate holdings across Seoul. She met with department heads and line workers, asking questions and listening to concerns that had been ignored for years. She discovered that Mireille had been systematically cutting corners and inflating profits to make herself look good, leaving the company vulnerable to competition and employee dissatisfaction. Slowly, carefully, Soyeon began making changes. She increased wages for the manufacturing workers. She invested in new technology for the research and development department. She launched a cultural initiative that provided funding for struggling artists and performers, exactly the kind of program her mother had dreamed of implementing. She worked 18-hour days, arriving at the office before dawn and leaving long after sunset, determined to prove that she deserved the position she had fought so hard to claim. Taehyun was with her through all of it, offering advice when she asked for it, but mostly just being present, a steady source of support and encouragement. They kept their relationship mostly private at first, aware of how the media would react to the story of the resurrected CEO dating her father's business partner. But eventually, pictures of them having dinner in Itaewon appeared in the tabloids, followed by speculation about whether they were dating or just friends. Soyeon decided to end the speculation during a press conference announcing Kim Corporation's new cultural initiative. When asked about her personal life, she smiled at the cameras and said, "Yes, Taehyun Kang and I are in a relationship. He's been my partner in every sense of the word, and I'm grateful to have him in my life. Now, if we can return to discussing the initiative." The media went wild, of course. The age difference and the dramatic circumstances of their relationship made for compelling headlines, but most of the coverage was positive, focusing on how Taehyun had helped Soyeon expose her stepmother's crimes and reclaim her inheritance. They became Seoul's most talked-about couple, their pictures appearing in magazines and social media feeds, the subject of endless speculation and admiration. 6 months after taking over Kim Corporation, Soyeon sat in her corner office overlooking the Han River and allowed herself to feel satisfied with everything she had accomplished. The company was thriving under her leadership. Her father had proven himself capable of change, working alongside her without trying to control her decisions. Mireille and Jiwoo had fled to Singapore and were reportedly living in reduced circumstances, their attempts to access their former wealth blocked by legal proceedings. And Taehyun loved her with a devotion that still took her breath away, even after all this time. She heard her office door open and looked up to find him standing there in his suit, holding a small box wrapped in silver paper. "What's this?" she asked as he crossed to her desk. "Open it and find out." Soyeon unwrapped the box carefully, her heart beginning to race as she recognized the size and shape. Inside was a ring, a perfect diamond set in platinum, elegant and understated in exactly the way she preferred. She looked up at Taehyun with tears in her eyes. "Is this what I think it is?" "That depends." He took the ring from the box and knelt beside her chair, holding it up so the diamond caught the afternoon light. "Kim Soyeon, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life taking care of you and supporting you and loving you with everything I have? Will you make me the happiest man in Seoul by agreeing to be my wife?" "Yes," Soyeon said without hesitation. "Yes, of course I'll marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, like everything else about their relationship. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her, and Soyeon thought about how far she had come from that terrified girl running through the parking garage. She had lost so much: her mother's life, years of her own life wasted trying to earn undeserved approval. But she had gained something infinitely more valuable: herself, her strength, her purpose, her future, and the man who had always believed she deserved all of it. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I love you too," he replied. "Now and always." The wedding took place on a warm day in early summer, in the gardens of Changdeokgung Palace, with its traditional buildings and ancient trees, providing a backdrop that connected past and present. Soyeon wore a custom hanbok in ivory and gold, her hair styled in the traditional manner, with delicate ornaments that had belonged to her mother. Taehyun stood waiting for her in a black hanbok, his eyes bright with emotion as she walked toward him along the path lined with white peonies. Her father gave her away, and though their relationship would never be uncomplicated, Soyeon found she was glad to have him there. They had both suffered at Mireille's hands, both been manipulated and deceived. They were learning together how to be a family again, how to honor the memory of the woman they had both loved. The ceremony was intimate, with only close friends and trusted business associates in attendance. Director Park and the other board members sat in the front row, beaming with approval. Mrs. Choi dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. The sun shone through the trees in dappled patterns, and somewhere in the gardens, a traditional musician played a gentle melody on the geagium. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Taehyun kissed her with such tenderness that Soyeon felt her heart might burst from happiness. This was real. This was forever. This was the life she had fought so hard to claim. Later, at the reception held in one of Seoul's most exclusive hotels near the Cheonggyecheon stream, Soyeon stood at the window of the bridal suite, watching the city lights reflect off the water below. Taehyun came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her back against his chest. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About second chances," she replied. "About how many people never get the opportunity to start over, to right the wrongs that were done to them. I'm thinking about how lucky I am to have had that chance, and how grateful I am that you were there to help me take it." "I'm the lucky one," Taehyun corrected, turning her in his arms so she faced him. "I'm the one who gets to wake up beside you every morning for the rest of my life. I'm the one who gets to watch you continue building your mother's legacy into something even greater than she imagined. You gave me purpose, Soyeon. You gave me a reason to be better than I was." "We saved each other," she said. "That's what partners do. Then here's to partnership." Taehyun raised her hand to his lips and kissed the ring he had placed there. To fighting together, building together, loving together. To second chances and new beginnings. To frozen hearts that learned to beat again, Soyeon added. Outside, the city of Seoul stretched in every direction, millions of lights illuminating the darkness. Somewhere out there, other people were fighting their own battles, searching for their own second chances. Soyeon hoped they found them. She hoped they found someone who would stand beside them, the way Taehyun had stood beside her. She hoped they found the strength to take back what was stolen and build something beautiful from the wreckage. Because that was what she had done, against all odds. Despite every obstacle placed in her path, she had survived. She had thrived. She had won. And she was just getting started. The months following the wedding brought new challenges and new triumphs. Kim Corporation launched its cultural initiative with a gala event at the Seoul Arts Center, attracting artists and performers from across Asia. The program provided grants and exhibition spaces for emerging talent, exactly the kind of support Soyeon's mother had envisioned decades ago. The media coverage was overwhelmingly positive, praising Soyeon's vision and her commitment to honoring her mother's legacy. Soyeon and Taehyun split their time between the penthouse in Samcheongdong and a new home they purchased in the hills above Seoul, a traditional hanok that they had modernized with careful attention to preserving its historic character. They hosted dinner parties for friends and business associates, traveled to Tokyo and Hong Kong for negotiations and conferences, and slowly built a life that felt both exciting and peaceful. Her relationship with her father continued to improve. They had lunch together once a week, always at the same restaurant in Insadong where her mother used to take her as a child. They talked about the company, about his memories of her mother, about his regrets, and his hopes for the future. It would never be perfect, but it was enough. One afternoon, about a year after the wedding, Soyeon received an unexpected phone call. The voice on the other end was familiar, but aged, rougher than she remembered. "Miss Kim? This is Dr. Yoon Seokjin. I hope you don't mind me calling." Soyeon felt her body tense instinctively at the name of the doctor, who had been paid to let her mother die, but she forced herself to remain calm. "Dr. Yoon, I wasn't expecting to hear from you." I know I have no right to ask anything of you. What I did was unforgivable, and I've spent every day since your mother's death carrying that guilt. But I wanted you to know that I've been working with a foundation that provides free medical care to low-income families in Busan. It's my way of trying to make amends. Though I know nothing I do can bring your mother back. No, Soyeon agreed. Nothing can bring her back. But I'm glad you're trying to do some good with your life. That's more than most people would do after making such a terrible mistake. I also wanted to tell you something about your mother. Something I've never told anyone before. Dr. Yoon's voice shook slightly. When she was in labor, when it became clear that there were complications, she held my hand and made me promise something. She said that if I could only save one of you, I had to save you. She said you were going to do extraordinary things, that you would change the world if given the chance. She was willing to die to give you that chance. Tears slid down Soyeon's cheeks as she listened. She really said that? She did. And looking at everything you've accomplished, Miss Kim, I think she was right. You're doing exactly what she believed you would do. You're honoring her memory in the best possible way. After the call ended, Soyeon sat in her office for a long time, thinking about her mother's sacrifice and the path that had led her here. She thought about the night she had been attacked in the parking garage, the moment she had decided to fight back instead of accepting defeat. She thought about Taehyun's unwavering support, her father's eventual redemption, the victories she had won and the battles she had yet to face. Her mother had been right. She was doing extraordinary things, and she was just beginning. That evening, she went home early, something she rarely did these days. Taehyun was in the kitchen preparing dinner, wearing an apron over his dress shirt and looking completely domestic, despite his usual executive intensity. He looked up when she entered, and immediately set down his knife, crossing to her with concern in his eyes. "What's wrong?" he asked, pulling her into his arms. "Nothing's wrong." Soyeon hugged him tightly, breathing in his familiar scent. "I just realized that I've been so focused on building the company and honoring my mother's legacy that I forgot to appreciate what I already have. This, us, the life we've built together." Taehyun kissed the top of her head. "We have the rest of our lives to appreciate it. There's no rush." "I know, but I want to start now." She pulled back to look up at him. "Let's take a vacation. Just the two of us, somewhere far from Seoul where nobody knows who we are or what we've accomplished. I want to remember what it feels like to just be Soyeon and Taehyun, not the CEO and her husband." "Where do you want to go?" "Jeju Island. We can stay in one of those traditional guest houses overlooking the ocean. We can hike to the volcanic peaks and eat fresh seafood and forget about corporate strategy for a while." Taehyun smiled, that warm, genuine expression she loved so much. "Then we'll go to Jeju. I'll clear my calendar and arrange everything. When do you want to leave?" "Tomorrow," Soyeon said impulsively. "Let's leave tomorrow." They spent 2 weeks in Jeju, staying in a small guest house run by an elderly woman who had no idea who they were and didn't seem to care. They hiked through lava tubes and climbed Halasan Mountain. They visited the women divers who harvested seafood using traditional methods. They ate barbecued pork and fresh abalone, and the best mandarins Soyeon had ever tasted. They walked along black sand beaches hand in hand, watching the sun set over the ocean, and for those 2 weeks, nothing else in the world mattered except being together. On their last night, they sat on the balcony of their guest house watching the stars emerge over the water. Soyeon leaned against Taehyun's shoulder, feeling more content than she could remember being in years. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For this. For always knowing what I need, even before I know it myself. For being my partner in every way that matters. You don't need to thank me for that. Taking care of you isn't work, Soyeon. It's the greatest privilege of my life." She turned in his arms to kiss him, soft and slow and full of promise. "I love you so much. I love you too." Taehyun's hands moved to her waist, pulling her closer. Now and forever. In this life and any other that might come after. In any other life, I would find you, Soyeon promised. I would recognize you instantly. The man who saved me, who loved me, who made me believe I was worth saving. And I would choose you all over again. Good, Taehyun said, because I would never let you go. Not in this life, not in any other. They made love that night, with the sound of waves crashing against the shore below, the stars brilliant above them, the future stretching out bright and beautiful and full of possibility. And Soyeon thought about the girl she had been, broken and desperate, running through a parking garage toward what she thought was certain death. That girl had survived. She had fought back. She had won, and she had become someone her mother would be proud of. The morning they left Jeju, Soyeon took one last look at the ocean before they headed to the airport. The water was calm and blue, stretching out to meet the sky at some distant point she couldn't see. It reminded her of all the possibilities that still lay ahead, all the dreams she had yet to fulfill, all the ways she could continue growing and changing and becoming more than she was. Ready to go back? Taehyun asked, taking her hand. Ready, Soyeon replied. Let's go home. They returned to Seoul refreshed and reconnected, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. The company was thriving, her father was healthy, and every day brought new opportunities to build something meaningful. Soyeon threw herself back into her work with renewed energy, launching new initiatives and expanding into markets her mother had dreamed of entering. 2 years after taking over Kim Corporation, Soyeon stood in the conference room where she had revealed herself to her father and stepmother, looking out at the city below. The company had doubled in size under her leadership. The cultural initiative had won international recognition. She had been featured in business magazines and invited to speak at conferences around the world. Everything she had fought for had come to fruition. But more than any professional achievement, she was proud of the person she had become. Strong without being hard, successful without losing her compassion, loved without losing herself. She had learned that revenge wasn't about destroying your enemies, but about building something so beautiful and powerful that their attempts to hurt you became irrelevant. Her mother would have been proud. Soyeon? Taehyun's voice came from the doorway. The board meeting is about to start. She turned to find him watching her with that look of absolute devotion that still made her heart skip, even after all this time together. I'm ready. Let's go. He crossed the room and took her hand, lacing their fingers together the way he always did when they walked anywhere together. You know, he said as they headed toward the boardroom, I was thinking about what you said in Jeju, about finding each other in any other life. What about it? I realized that I don't need another life to feel grateful. I have everything I could possibly want right here, right now. You, the company, the future we're building together. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Soyeon squeezed his hand. Me too. For the first time in my life, I'm not looking backward or forward. I'm exactly where I want to be, with exactly who I want to be with. They entered the boardroom together, partners in every sense of the word, ready to lead Kim Corporation into its next chapter. The board members stood to greet them, and as Soyeon took her seat at the head of the table with Taehyun beside her, she felt a profound sense of rightness settle over her. This was her mother's legacy, but it was also her own. She had earned every bit of this success through her courage and determination. She had taken the worst moments of her life and transformed them into something powerful and good. She had survived betrayal and murder attempts and loss, and she had emerged stronger for it. And she had found love along the way, the deep and abiding kind that came from truly knowing someone, from being known by them in return. Taehyun knew every scar she carried, every fear she harbored, every dream she chased. And he loved her not despite those things, but because of them. As the meeting began and Soyeon outlined her plans for the coming quarter, she caught Taehyun's eye across the table. He smiled at her, that private smile that was meant only for her, and she smiled back. They didn't need words to communicate what they were feeling. They had been through too much together, had fought too many battles side by side. They understood each other on a level that went beyond language. After the meeting ended and the board members filed out, Taehyun stayed behind. He pulled Soyeon into his arms and held her close, his chin resting on top of her head. "I'm so proud of you," he murmured. "Not just for what you've accomplished professionally, but for who you've become. You're extraordinary, Soyeon. Never forget that." "I won't," she promised. "How could I when you remind me every day?" They stood there for a long moment, wrapped in each other's arms, looking out at the city they had claimed as their own. Seoul spread out below them in every direction, a city of 10 million people living their own stories, fighting their own battles, chasing their own dreams. Somewhere out there, someone else might be facing betrayal or loss or fear. Somewhere out there, someone else might need to hear that survival was possible, that second chances were real, that frozen hearts could learn to beat again. Soyeon hoped they found their own version of what she had found. She hoped they discovered their own strength, their own purpose, their own person who would stand beside them no matter what. Because everyone deserved that chance. Everyone deserved to be loved the way Taehyun loved her. "Ready to go home?" he asked eventually. "Ready," she replied. "Let's go home." They left the office hand in hand, the way they always did, two people who had found each other in the darkness and built something beautiful in the light. Behind them, the sun set over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new reasons to keep fighting and building and loving. But tonight, they would go home to their traditional house in the hills, open a bottle of wine, cook dinner together in their modern kitchen, and appreciate the simple miracle of having found each other. Tonight, they would remember that the best revenge wasn't destruction, but creation. The best way to honor the past was to build a future worth living. Tonight, and every night after, they would choose each other, in this life and any other that might come. Because some loves were strong enough to survive anything. Some loves were meant to be. And theirs was both.